How many of you feel real good, so good that you could pretty much do anything you want? We've got a long way to go, all of us. In fact, to be quite frank about it, we're very much under siege. And the attack is greatly leveled against our bodies, against our future, against the future of our children and grandchildren. You don't have access to knowing what an herb does. I find that to be extremely tyrannical. Not only is the literature sterilized, any company representative, and I understand that, they can't talk about it. I appreciate that. I'm not speaking for the company, I want you to know this. I'm speaking from my clinical research and the books that I write. I can talk about it because I'm a private person and I'm not financially connected to any company. So our audience tonight is going to find out exactly what these natural medicines do as far as, disease prevention and even the treatment of disease.
Well, on behalf of Nature's Pantry and North American Urban Spice, we'd like to welcome you to tonight's lecture with Dr. Cass Ingram. We're thrilled because this is the first time that Dr. Ingram has been out here to our store. We've tried several times in the past, but luckily we're able to bring him out here in 2012. And thank you, Dr. Ingram, for coming out. Dr. Cass Ingram is a nutritional physician who received a BS in biology and chemistry from the University of Northern Iowa and a DO from the University of Osteopathic Medicine and Health Sciences. Dr. Ingram has written 24 books on natural healing, including the bestseller, The Cure is in the Cupboard. He has given hope to millions through the lectures on thousands of TV and radio shows. His research and writing have led to countless cures and discoveries. He is one of North America's leading experts on health benefits and disease-fighting properties of wild medicinal spice extracts. He now travels the world promoting perfect health the natural way. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Cass Ingram.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all doing? That's good. That's great. That's fantastic. How many of you feel real good, like about $1 trillion, so good that you could pretty much do anything you want, get up anytime you want, get up early, carry yourself through the day, never get tired, never need a nap, pretty much real good mentally, everything functions from the neck up, good memory, good alertness, and also you're able to concentrate on whatever you want, maybe write an article, read a book, write a novel, do a screenplay, be extremely productive 7 days a week without anything other than, your normal evening sleep. How many of you are in pretty much that position? I'm almost there. I've got 4 liars in Independence, Missouri. Almost. Okay, so 4 truth speakers. So we've got a long way to go, all of us. In fact, to be quite frank about it, we're very much under siege. How many of you are familiar with this? We're under attack in every conceivable way in the United States, perhaps more than anywhere in the world. And the attack is greatly leveled against our bodies, against our future, against the future of our children and grandchildren, and against our pocketbooks, and against our freedom. I don't know that we are free in the United States. And that's right, and it's high time that that's achieved from today onward. And the freedom that we get just from knowing the truth, by having that knowledge, because that knowledge does set you free. When you have the knowledge, nothing matters. When you understand, when you have real knowledge, then it does set you free. You're free no matter what happens, because you know the truth, and that's the power that is invincible. And I bring this up, although it seems a bit off topic from a health lecture, because the greatest oppression I have seen is in the area of free access to health care, to healthy things that can be used to prevent illness, to cure disease. And I'm talking about everything from machines to herbs to various drugs that might be off market, but particularly to natural medicine and various types of machinery that are helpful to human health. We do not have access to these kinds of therapies. Now, there's another real good example of this. When someone feeds at the breast, they're feeding their infant. What kind of milk is that? Isn't it raw milk? It's colostrum rich, it's vitamin rich. And that's how God made it. That's our inalienable right. And also, when people in the villages for the last thousands of years have gone to their animals, what kind of milk did they bring from the teats? Wasn't it raw? Isn't it raw milk? Yes. And so who, and this is the way our Creator made it, who is it that would legislate against us to have access to raw milk? What kind of a tyrannical world do we live in? Now, take it a step further. Not just raw milk, but the whole idea of having something that is actually more effective than the other alternative, which is homogenized milk. We know from studies in Europe that the people who consume raw milk on a regular basis are much healthier than people who drink homogenized milk. They have better bone structure, they have great stock, great strength if they've been reared on raw milk, which from cows and goats, like mothers feed their infants. They have an improved immune system, less allergies, and yet that's denied to us. There's no basis for it, I must add. How many of you have been reared on raw goats or cow's milk from the farm? And it's more delicious. Yeah. So the immune system benefits, the palate benefits, the bone structure benefits, and so forth. Another example of a lack of freedom is that we have genetically engineered food right in this freezer, perhaps. Well, not at nature's pantry, of course, but it's all over the place. And you have to become a scientist, an internet aficionado, to know where it is. Do you know, that's America. But in Hungary, it's a felony offense with prison time if you put a food on the market that has GMOs in it. And if in former Russian bloc Hungary, you grow a plot of genetically engineered foods, you will be thrown in prison. It's a crime in all of Europe to put GMOs in foods and not label it so. In Europe and England, they give cane sugar into the sodas. Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, the different firms are forced to switch from corn syrup, which they give us in our sodas, to sugar, not just any sugar, to cane sugar, because beet sugar is also GMO, and that's what they have to use in European sodas. We are the least free in many ways of all people. When you go to an airport, do you feel free to do as you please without restriction? We have a nice guy, I'm going to bring him up on stage and help me out, my yes man in the front. He's laughing about this one. You are tyrannized, and they select the most vulnerable people to attack. Or perhaps it's done on race or color. That's not uncommon too. But I must say that they try to push people into that backscatter machine. How many of you avoid that machine? Okay, many of you. How many of you go through that machine, the machine where they have you hold up your arms? Anybody go through that? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's extremely poisonous. It's backscatter, terahertz technology. It's made by the same companies that produce the drones, 3D communications. You see how the knowledge sets us free? 3D communications, Israeli-American technology is producing drones, and they also produce the backscatter machine. And you know Michael Chertoff profited greatly on the machinery. And what did Europe say? They said, you know, you push this on us, but it's going to be banned. So the European Union has recently completely banned terahertz machines. We need to know it. And here's what the European Union agent de charge said. He said that the backscatter machines give out X-rays, and we're not going to X-ray our people anymore in Europe. And so now, when we think about it a little bit, when I see people as they walk up to those machines, I tell them, what are you doing? Don't go through that. As many people as I can access, and they overheard me doing that, right? So the guy says, okay, you go through the machine. I say, I'm not going to go through the machine. And he says, opt out, right? See, I know we're not free, so I start arguing with them a little bit, and I say, you know, I don't want to be felt up. It's very, very, oppressive. It's not right. They don't allow these in Europe. I even told them these are not good for you. They're banned in Europe. You know they're banned. And I don't want to be felt up, and I don't want to be X-rayed. And so finally, the short woman comes up, very bombastic, and she says, you're going to get it, or you're not going to go anywhere. But you see, then when you see that you don't have access also to another important thing, you don't have access to knowing what an herb does. I find that to be extremely tyrannical. How many of you feel very strongly that we should be able to say what the herb or plant does, as far as what disease it cures? Okay? Everybody wants to know that. Do you see the literature? It's sterilized. The literature is sterilized. It doesn't say much. And if you take it a step further, not only is the literature sterilized, any company representative, and I understand that, they can't talk about it. I appreciate that. But I can talk about it because I'm a private person and I'm not financially connected to any company. So our audience tonight is going to find out exactly what these natural medicines do as far as disease prevention and even the treatment of disease. So what's happened is that in the past you could say what an herb does. So if you went back to Pharaoh's time or to the ancient Greeks or the Romans or the medieval Europeans, and you looked in the textbooks about what rosemary does, they would say that rosemary is excellent for the brain and that it prevents memory loss. It's great for reversing memory loss and senility and dementia. That it's fantastic for high blood pressure. This would be said in the old text. Oregano in the old texts from, say, 1500 or the Greek times, they would tell you that it eliminates a snake bite, a scorpion bite, that it heals open wounds or battle wounds, that it stops hemorrhaging from a wound, and that it is a cure for colds, bronchitis, head colds, sinusitis, and that it also eliminates diarrhea or stomach trouble. That's what the ancients said about oregano. They also said that oregano is superb for problems in the chest, so that if you have, for example, heart failure or arrhythmia or angina, believe it or not, oregano was the cure since ancient Babylon. And so you could go into the ancient medieval books or prior, and you can find out what all these things do. You could find out about chaga, you can find out about oregano, cumin, sage, turmeric, and you could find out even in the beginning of this century, up to about 1920. You could find out what these things do. For example, cod liver oil or salmon oil. In 1910 it was published that in common ads all over the United States, that if you're having bone trouble or arthritis or tuberculosis even, or spinal disorders, or fatigue, or poor immune system, or tuberculosis at large, that you can take cod liver oil and it's part of the cure. They would even advertise that. They would even say that you can take cod liver oil to reverse disease. In this case, salmon oil is another option. Dandelion was published in the turn of the century as a way to reverse liver disorders, congestion in the liver, also gallstones, and hepatitis as well. Anything where the liver is disordered, then you look to nettles and dandelion and burdock. Burdock at the turn of the century was also published as a way to clean out the blood if the blood is toxic and diseased. So therefore, wild greens as a treatment. So now we have a situation where we don't have the ability to find these things out so easily. I would turn you on to my books. I'm an independent, and you can find out everything oregano does in the Cures in the Cupboard and the Miracle of Wild Oregano. You can find out about chaga in the Cures in the Forest. You can find out about the endocrine system in the Body Shape Diet. And then you can get an idea of how to use the different supplements for different conditions. So we can summarize this. To find out more about natural medicine, you must study the independent literature, the scientific abstracts, and the books. And hopefully, we'll be able to get a copy of this tape for all of you so that you can find out how to use the different herbs for different conditions. That being said, we have to start with diet. Diet is the first place to go because right now we're having big problems with people getting sick, mainly from the GMO contaminants. So let's start with that. How many of you know what GMOs are and you know what they are? Okay. Does anyone not know what a GMO is? All right. Do you know that right now the scientists actually create seeds where they inject bacterial genes or viral genes or genes from other plants or animals into the seed through a microscopic gun? That's so that they can create a change in the DNA inside the seed. Once that's done, then they can patent the seed so that they can make a monopoly on seed sales. They also do this to inject genes from bacteria that produce a pesticide. Bacillus thuringiensis, it produces the same pesticide that's used in organic farming. What happens is that once those bacterial or viral genes are inside the corn, the cottonseed, or the soybean, or the beet sugar gene, then it codes for the pesticide. It codes for the toxin so that when you eat the GMO food, you get toxic man-made pesticides in your body. Also, when you eat the GMO food, because they shot animal genes or bacterial genes, viral genes, into the seed, when you eat it, it has now been found that those genes go into your bacteria in your colon, in your body. Not good. So the first thing to do is to eliminate GMOs because they're poisoning our whole culture terribly and causing a great increase in disease. Case in example, Russians have done some research to show that when people or when animals are given genetically engineered soy, in this case Monsanto soy, within 3 generations, what happens to the animals? Does anybody know what happens to the guinea pigs? Did you see the research? They totally, exactly, they go completely sterile. No one's talking about this in the public forum, with the exception of Jeffrey Smith and others. So it sterilizes the genetic parts of the reproductive tract. When another Russian study was done by Irina Ermakova, she found that when you feed genetically engineered soy from Monsanto to laboratory rats that are pregnant, so you've got pregnant rats, they're eating the soy, they have a 55% increase in mortality. So here we have these babies coming out dead in 55% of the cases. 45% are alive and they're mutated. They're all contorted and shriveled up. their organs are damaged and weakened. When they fed regular soy to the animals, only 5% mortality. So the mortality was 10 times higher. When they fed casein, there was no mortality. When they fed milk protein, okay? So now, that being said, when we eat it, we get poisoned. So, question to everybody. Does anybody know what foods are genetically engineered? Okay, now, I want the audience to know this, because we got to boycott Monsanto, because you know what? Remember I mentioned we don't have freedom? This stuff is banned in Europe. It's banned in South America. African nations don't want it. We eat it. It's time to put a stop to it. So let's go over the list one more time. Genetically engineered foods to avoid are any foods made from soy, corn, and therefore soy and corn oil, cottonseed, beet sugar, Hawaiian papaya, crooked neck squash, and canola. Now that interferes with some of the stuff in the stores, but hey, we've got to start somewhere and put a stop to it. Now the second thing on diet is to eat the proper food for your better health. And this food includes animal food, whole grains, eggs, poultry, vegetables, and fruit. For most people. Some people are gluten intolerant. That's generally my diet. Nuts and seeds is an accent. Now, let me ask you this. When you eat food, do you strip the skin off the chicken? And do you avoid the fat on the lamb and the beef? Do you? Eat it. You should be eating that stuff. That's fuel for the body. You'll feel better, you'll have more energy if you eat the natural fats in the food. This is another insane fad. What's the main reason that cholesterol goes up? Does anybody know? Why? Carbohydrates, your gut, you know, this audience, we don't need to talk. You know it all. It's the sugar and the starch that raises the cholesterol. And if you eat the natural fat in the eggs, in the lamb, in the steak, in the poultry, with the skin on, and even if you drink the drippings, your cholesterol will go down guaranteed. And that's cheap because you don't have to see the cardiologist or take Lipitor. That's just stuff you can buy here. So that's my diet in a nutshell. And now some people are different. There are some people that have to do a little bit more aggressively with the vegetables and the fruit and a little less in the meat area. And we'll discuss that towards the end when we do the body types. But as a rule, for most of you, if you eat the animal foods like I mentioned, broiled, grilled, cooked in butter or olive oil, and you cut back on the carbs, moving more to the vegetables and the fruits and the nuts and the seeds, you're going to do better. You're going to have more energy, you're not going to nosedive, and you're not going to blow up like a balloon. Right? How many of you are addicted to carbohydrates? You eat way too much stuff. Anybody hit the sugar? Refined sugar? A few of you? So, out. No more refined sugar. There's a move right now globally to make refined sugar into a regulated drug. Professor Yudkin at the University, the King's College in London, in about 1960, 1970, wrote a book called Sweet and Dangerous, Professor Yudkin. And he said that if you take the same standards for saccharin, for sugar, then sugar would be banned from human consumption immediately. Extremely dangerous material. Feeds fungus, knocks down the pancreas, damages the liver, ages the brain, ages your body, and it's just that easy to eliminate. Now, what kind of sweetener can you have that's healthy and gives you vitality? Well, stevia is okay to a limit because if you take it too much, the pancreas can start to react a bit. But here and there, stevia is fine. What's that? What? Raw honey. I've got in the back a lady that said that the honey is potentially GMO because they're finding in the honey, the pollens, the altered, corrupt pollens from GMO food. And she asked the question about the American honey not being allowed in Europe. And that's true. So that unfortunately now, and this is why you're so important. We can talk all day about your conditions, and we will, but we can't make any progress without a massive effort by you to not buy GMOs, to raise a stink and to boycott these foods. Now our honey is corrupted. Our eggs are GMO tainted. We didn't mention milk with bovine growth hormone, and the chicken and beef that's not from GMO, that's not from organic sources, free-ranged, is another GMO. And you eat that food and you will have negative consequences. So on the honey, you have to get this. How many honeys in this store from Africa, from the mountains of the Mediterranean, wild oregano honey as well? So that's what we have to look to. Unless we can go to an area that's mostly bush, and you know the beekeeper, so that is an issue. What other sweeteners is the question that are safe? Raw maple sugar, or even the cooked kind is at least better than cane sugar. Agave has lots of issues, so if you can get the really good, really pure kind, that would be better. And then yacon syrup is another one from the yacon root in Peru. And that one has very low glycemic. Okay, another one is the raw organic sugar from cane. That's an option. A lot of our population is sensitive to cane sugar, but that is an option. Yeah, especially the really unprocessed kind, the turbinado and so forth. All of these are better options. Okay, what is your diet? It should be the grass-fed animal food and the eggs, and don't worry about the quantity for most of you. Some of you are more inclined to vegetarianism, and that's understandable. You move that way. But for those of us that are okay with omnivorism, we don't worry about if it's a 4-ounce steak or a 6-ounce steak. If you want 3 eggs or 2 eggs or 4 eggs, okay? And then the poultry, always with the skin on. Does that change anybody's habits in here? Yeah. Okay. Is it a little bit tastier? Yeah. Yeah, quite a bit tastier. And then the fish, which is a little bit of an issue we'll talk about because of Fukushima, Pacific fish versus Atlantic. It's a complex thing, but fish in general. But what about fish? Farm raised? No. Okay, good. Always wild. Then you have the fruits and vegetables, especially in the fruit category, the berries. Lots and lots and lots of berries. Nuts and seeds, and coarse grains, especially sprouted grains. One caveat, though, is if people are allergic to wheat, then they must stay away from all gluten products, especially wheat, rye, and barley. They might be able to tolerate oats. Do we have anybody in the audience that's gluten intolerant? Anybody at all? Okay. Do you have to stay away from all the different things? So keep in mind that possibility. Now, we've kind of got an idea of what we should do for food, and now we open up the issue of these chronic health conditions that are plaguing our country. There are 2 main reasons why we're chronically ill. One is something maybe we don't think enough about, but it's called vaccines. A lot of people won't talk about it, but vaccines are an enormous cause of chronic ill health in this country. How many of you did not get any of the vaccines? You didn't. Okay. No vaccines? Someone who got no vaccines? Is there anyone? Okay, you got no vaccines? I mean, I'm talking about never getting the polio sugar cube, nothing. Everybody's been vaccinated. How many of you got lots of vaccines? Keep your hands up if you did. Huh? Lots? And how many of you have chronic health problems that got lots of vaccines? Okay? So, if you've gotten a lot of vaccines, you have to clean that out of your body or you won't have the ideal health that you need. And that's where we get into the wild oregano. In fact, I like the oil of oregano and the purge to clean out vaccine toxins, that combination. Oil of oregano, juice of oregano, purge, and to blow it out. Sometimes something called Oregaresp would be helpful. You may not see it here. But this, right here, is my favorite medically, combined with the oil of oregano, for people who are weakened and knocked down by vaccines. Do you know what the #1 cause of cancer is in this country, in children? according to cancer research, for instance? Vaccination. Do you remember a guy by the name of Mendelssohn, Robert Mendelssohn, and his books? Vaccination, he said, is the cause of 90% of the lymphoma and leukemia in children. It's the most unbelievable thing. No one can fathom it. GMOs, vaccinations, fluoride. These are the top two things I would tell you. Fluoride and chlorine and vaccination that you must avoid, as well as the GMOs. They're all carcinogenic. All right, now we get into this a little bit. We get into the vaccinations. How many people in here who've had cancer? The prohibited term. Okay? If you've had cancer, you must clean out your system from vaccine toxins and vaccine viruses. And also, if you've had the vaccines, you must take a course, in my experience, with that cleansing. I would aggressively use the purge. I would use the oil of oregano and the juice of oregano as the minimal protocol. Now, part of the vaccines, how many of you just can't function? You're just too tired to get anything done. Is there anybody in that category? Those of you who are tired, exhausted, not functional, and you know you've had all the vaccines, try the purge. Take it for 30 days, an ounce a day, a couple ounces a day. Take the oil of oregano, 5 drops or 10 drops a day. Drink the juice of oregano to clear that out of your system. It's very powerful and very effective. I had a case history of a fellow who had inability to function mentally. He had problems with his memory. He was tired all the time. He took the purge. He noticed that within a month or so his hair turned from white to yellow, then to dark, like dark black. He started having big clarity of thinking, and he started to have, real good energy, good vitality. This is made from wild greens, essential oils, and black seed oil, as well as extra virgin olive oil and vinegar. And the greens in there are raw. And the purpose of this is to really purge the toxins out of the body. One side effect of this is you might feel like you want to kill me after taking it for 3 days. And the reason is you start dumping the pesticides, the dioxins, the heavy metals, the bisphenols. You start dumping the poison, and you start killing parasites. So when you have that junk come out into the gut, you could feel, ugh. Now we're not talking about diarrhea or anything, but just the sense that you have like a flu or something. And then as soon as you urinate and have a bowel movement, it goes away. That's how interesting this is. Because keep in mind, when you look at something like this is wild material. It's harvested in the far north of Canada, and you can see it looks like some kind of muck. Very, very effective. It's a life changer for health. There's a question in the front on how long do you take it if you're trying to detox. I had a guy in Europe who had psoriasis all over his body, and he had this big belly. He wanted to get married, and so he wanted to clean up his act with all the psoriasis and the belly and stuff. He was a huge chicken eater, always eating commercial chicken and hot dogs and eggs, not our kind, not the organic. So I got him off the chicken and the eggs, and I put him on 2 ounces of this a day and some oil of oregano, juice of oregano, and a few other bits. In about 90 days, I gave him 12 bottles. All his psoriasis fell off his body. And I'm sure he had parasites. He must have killed them. But usually with this, it kills them and they die and you don't see anything but the carcass. You don't see a live parasite. He lost about 40 pounds of bloat on the front of his belly. So this is an excellent question. A lot of times we try stuff and then bail. This is not that way. This is muck from the wild north, plus spice oils and various heavy monounsaturated oils. It tastes like salad dressing. And for this to work most efficiently, to cure you and to bring back your health, you have to take it regularly until you're well. Yeah. I've had at least 3 women report to me that they blew off 40 pounds to 50 pounds off the front of their abdomen with this. And of course, you might ask, why is it doing that? What could be growing in that bloated abdomen? Who knows? There was there was a research done in England of a woman who had this blob that they found on X-ray. They opened her up, honest to God, and they cut the blob out and put it on a scale. You know, sometimes the British have a sense of humor. They weighed the blob, and then they cultured it. And they found out it was a 45-pound fungus. Yeah. So in our systems, we are supersaturated. I mentioned to you the vaccines, now parasites, and fungus, GMOs, fluoride, chlorine, pesticides, herbicides, dioxins, and there's no way you're going to function. So that's why you have to clean up your diet. I mean, we asked for a raise of hands. There were 3 of us that fallaciously put our hands up. You know, and on a clean, healthy diet, it doesn't have to prohibit meats. It has to prohibit GMOs and sugar. Then you can move in while you're doing the clean diet and get your health straightened out. Now, in addition to parasites and fungus and viruses, there are also chronic bacterial infections, you know, staph, strep, and all this. So we've got all these other germs, and you have to sometimes look at oregano oil for that, because oregano oil is antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, antiparasitic to a degree. But the main value of oregano oil is the bacteria, the fungus, the mold, and the viruses. As far as parasites, I use this, you know, and add it to that. The oil of oregano is mildly effective for parasites, but mainly for amoeba, blastocystis, and giardia. When you get into things like worms and horrible flukes and various toxic parasites in the colon and the liver, you got to get into that type of thing. So any questions on infections? Here's a question in the front of how many people I would guess have parasites. When I study an audience, I usually see about 1 of 3 people who has a definite parasitic infection by the signs on their tongues and their eyes. And so my guess would be 50% of us have a significant parasitic infestation. We can see evidence of parasitic infestation on the little lady on the front. We can look very carefully here and see others. We see a little evidence in the lady here, just a little bit. And what we're looking for is something right here, the tongue, let's see. Brave lady. There's a little evidence there. What you look for is purplish red discoloration in the corners of the eyes. If you see that, then you know it's almost 100% of the time it's parasitic infestation in the gut. If you see also in the tongue that the outside edge of the tongue is bald, or if the tongue itself is very bald, that's parasitic. Well, this isn't bald, right? Red, beefy tongue with a lot of papillae. Somebody said, what does that mean, bald? Bald means that there's no taste buds. Okay? And when you see that, then there's usually major infestation. If you add the bald tongue with the purplish red discolorations in the corners of the eyes to, if you add it to like bloating after you eat, and also if you get diarrhea sometimes, or then it switches to constipation, or if you're chronically constipated, if you have a poor appetite, if you're emaciated, if you have some of those symptoms, those are big parasite symptoms. Also, the nails can teach us about parasites and fungus. If the ridges are really heavy, like washboard ridges up and down on the nails, that's a sign of low stomach acid and parasitic infestation. And especially there's an unusual one where you see this big divot right up and down the nail bed. If you see some kind of like a concave lesion, a divot in the thumb, that's a huge sign of parasites. It's a sign of fluke infection in the liver and in the gut. Yeah. So and then the nails can teach a lot about fungus too. If you want to know the signs there, if the nail beds are flat, they're supposed to have a natural hump, but they're just not doing that. And if you see the actual really yellow and thick nails, you obviously know that. But when the nail beds are flat, that usually means there's intestinal fungus. Now, If you see a little red splinter in the nail bed, I'm speaking to you as a doctor now, we're going to give you some diagnostics. Little teeny thing looks like a splinter, that's a sign of trichinosis. It's also a sign of a bacterial infection in the heart. So if you have that splinter hemorrhage, and you're really tired and you can't go up steps, you probably have an infection on your heart valve. Or the other option is trichinosis. Sometimes people have those splinter hemorrhages on the toes also. So these are the easy ways that are not expensive to kind of get a pin down of what the problem is. Now, you know that fungus is an epidemic. So, you know, it's one thing to be vaccinated and all that and to have parasites that you picked up at a salad bar or traveling overseas or maybe from animals or whatever, or from kissing a dog. Oops. But you can get them that way. But then it's the whole fungal thing is totally an epidemic. And it's not that difficult to figure out if there's a fungus among us. I can see the guy in the back row and others. And what you do is you look to see if a person has like a ruddy complexion. If your skin is very pink and, you know, unusually pink or reddish, that's usually a sign of systemic yeast infection. And then, of course, the more common signs we mentioned earlier, the toenails are not right. There's vaginal discharge, of course, that's another problem. Jock itch, seborrhea, those are all fungal signs. Even dandruff is a fungus. Some people have it to the extreme, heavy dandruff or seborrhea, and that's not a sign just of dandruff locally, but of systemic fungus internally. You can see other signs of fungus. For example, some people will have a very interesting lesion that's round annular lesions, like ringworm. Or even in the hair, if you have round spots where your hair falls out, it's called alopecia, that's fungal. Some people even have something where they lose the pigment of their skin, it's called vitiligo. And that's strictly a fungal infection. It may also be related to problems in the endocrine system, but then once the endocrine system gets weak, the fungus takes a foothold. Now, there are symptoms of fungus. When you eat, you get bloated. You can get constipated easily. You can have alternating diarrhea and constipation, much like in parasites. But one of the big symptoms is bloating. Another, craving sugar. How many of you in this audience have a terrible craving for sugar? Okay? Yeah? You do, miss, over here in the red? Remember that ruddy skin we were talking about? Yeah? Sweets. And so that's another thing to do, is if you've got fungal overload, knock it out. You're craving sweets. You're craving starches. How many crave chocolate? Yeah, you're craving it? Kill the fungus and the craving goes away. Kill the fungus and craving for sugar goes away. Yeah. Automatically, quickly. Yeah.
So I have a question. Is that one of those constipation?
Fungus, there's a great question on the front, a real great question. If you think you have fungus, if you've got the signs and symptoms, what do you do about it? Do you take the oregano oil constantly? Ladies and gentlemen, most of us don't have that vital health. The fungus is difficult to kill. It's a chronic suppressor of the immune system. So we have people go on 30, 60, or 90 days of oil of oregano, juice of oregano, maybe even the Oregamax. I'm not speaking for the company, I want you to know this. I'm speaking from my clinical research and the books that I write. And you have to stay the course for at least 30 to 90 days. It's like an antibiotic that way, to kill it, yeah. Okay, you're taking Oregamax for pneumonia?
Oregamax, and it cured my...
Well, do you have a microphone at all? Can you tell everybody about that? Because it's so simple. I mean, it's God's medicine and you don't need anything else. Just turn around and tell everybody.
Okay, I've had pneumonia about 4 different times, and my daughter called me from California when I had pneumonia at one time out here, and she told me to get Oregamax. So I keep Oregamax in my cupboard, and when my daughter came to visit, my daughter that lives here, when she came to visit, she started getting pneumonia, so I had her to take that. In fact, she's on it right now, and but it cured me. I have a high chemical allergy, so I don't take anything for pain. I take COX-2.
Oh, COX-2.
I take COX-2 for pain. I don't take any painkillers. I never take aspirin anyway, and that was before I found out that I had a high chemical allergy. But anyway, I like the Oregamax and the COX-2 because it helps me.
And the COX-2, herbs for COX-2? You're taking the herbs for COX-2? Okay, so you're just doing everything with natural. And keep in mind that God made this stuff, and I'm just telling you to use it. It's in the Bible, as you know. It tells you to purge. He tells us to cure ourselves. I'm not the expert there, but I know it says that it's hyssop. Hyssop is actually Aesop. Aesop is from Ezov, which is Hebrew. Ezov means oregano. It doesn't mean hyssop. It's the most effective purge that you can use for sickness, oregano. And then you back it up with the wild greens, which are also mentioned biblically and so on. And then there's black seed oil. Black seed is mentioned in those scriptures. And the olive oil in the Bible and the Quran is mentioned. And the honey. These are the reliable medicines, barring the GMO contamination we heard about. So that's that. Any questions about fungus? It's an absolute epidemic. Most of you probably have it. We can see it on the tongue. I'll first of all give everybody the tongue sign. If the tongue has a yellowish furry coating, that's fungal. Okay? If it has a whitish gray coating, it's fungal. If it has a white, cheesy, thick, or just a obvious white coating, that's fungal. If it's extremely red, inflammatory red, it's fungal. So many different representations. On mold, it's the same thing, but sometimes it takes a little longer to purge the mold, like Aspergillus or Stachybotrys. How easy is it to kill mold on tile in a restroom? That stuff, and even it stains the tile. So that's even more difficult than Candida. And usually you have to use the juice of oregano in the purge. But let me just give the protocol. I know these products are up here. I love these products. And I'm going to do health freedom today, okay? All right, I'm going to recommend a protocol to clean your funguses out. A very powerful one. You use the oil of oregano, the Oregamax, and the purge. If you have mold and deep-seated problems, you add in the juice of oregano. Okay? Any more questions on infection? Viruses, bacteria, mold, all that. Question on the front about rosacea. Rosacea is associated with H. pylori in the gut. If you kill the H. pylori, it's also associated with mites. There's a mite called the Demodex mite that eats inside of the pores of the face and causes rosacea. So I know that's kind of uncomfortable for you rosaceacs, but you can kill the mite by putting the oil of oregano on the cheeks, or chaga cream, and take the oregano juice internally and the Oregamax to kill, and the oil of oregano to kill the bacteria in the gut. Yeah. Here's a person adding in that her rosacea went away after eliminating the gluten, and of course gluten destroys the lining of the gut, and that's another cause for skin disorders. Plus, when you destroy the lining of the gut, then the gut gets infected by germs. It's not healthy. The immune system of the gut gets wiped out. Yeah. The sophisticated protocol for fungus purging, which includes your toenail fungus and all that, is the purge, the oil of oregano, the Oregamax, and the juice of oregano. That's sort of the full phase protocol. In some very difficult cases, there's a supplement called Oregaresp that you could take like three times a day in really extreme fungus cases. Like some of the cases of psoriasis, I will add that product to it. It's very aggressive for the most difficult systemic fungal cases or difficult virus cases where the people are in chronic fatigue and immunosuppression, Oregaresp. Now, the second area, besides cleaning up the infection, is the deficiencies. Are we deficient in nutrients? If you're grossly deficient, you're not going to function well. Now, how many of you don't have energy and strength and just don't feel good every day? Okay? Most of you are going to be deficient. You're taking multiple vitamins, but they may not be getting into the bloodstream. How many are taking multiple vitamins? Okay? Now, there's a big difference. I want you to experiment with a whole food supplement. We can do some kinesiology sometimes. We can look at the label. We can hold it and feel the energy. When I take this stuff, I have a dramatic improvement in my health if I stick with it. Take a packet a day or a packet every other day, I feel a huge difference. What is this? This is whole food vitamins. It's not from any kind of chemical. It's strictly from different plant substances and animal substances. Read the label. Grass-fed Argentinian beef liver. Then, of course, you've got in here sockeye salmon from wild sockeye salmon. You have in here Torula yeast, rice bran, royal jelly. Very effective in improving health. Now, I have not had a lot of success with taking multiple vitamins and multiple minerals and having people have a dramatic improvement in their health. But when I give them this and the Purely Min, bang, there's energy, there's strength, and it's within a day or two, even after one packet. Now, it's called Purely Pack and Purely Min. It's totally food. It's completely different than what we're doing now. Right now, what we're doing is we're taking mostly multiple vitamins. The multiple vitamins have coal tar and petrochemical distillates. The minerals are things like ferrous fumarate, magnesium carbonate, magnesium, amino acid chelate. They're kind of like synthetics or semi-synthetics. I mean, when you get into the coal tar and the petrochemical distillates, that's not even semi-synthetic. That's chemical. We're talking about low dose just from food. And you can experiment with that, but you will notice a big power in your energy. You can find out if you're deficient easy enough. You'll have the signs and symptoms on your faces and your tongues and in your symptoms, yeah. I don't. She asks if you take that, do you have to take extra supplements like in the vitamin category? I rely on this. It gives me the baseline. You could take extra C from Camu Camu. I mean, I'm not going to recommend synthetic ascorbate. You could take extra E if you need to, but it's all in here. There's the E, A, D, and B complex. So for someone that wants to just do it from food, this is the option. And even the minerals. You could take the Purely Min, but you could also take extra magnesium, zinc if you want. I don't. I just take what does a primitive person in Africa do when they're pregnant and they need more calcium? Does anybody know? They go eat clay from clay deposits. They don't take, all the old people I meet, none of them sit and pop handfuls and handfuls of synthetic supplements. It's just cheese and, they're slaughtering a lamb and drinking raw milk and eating a handful of nuts and stuff like that. Or in the case of the pregnant women, the clay deposits. Or they're eating lots of fish. So if you do it with food, then you're going to get better results. Now, what are the signs and symptoms of vitamin deficiency? We were kind of running out of time, but we'll get into it. They are, for example, dry hair or oily hair. Dry hair is vitamin A, oily hair is B complex. Oiliness around here is B vitamin deficiency. Enlarged facial pores, B vitamins and magnesium. Okay? Then you have the tongue. If the tongue has scalloping, the edges are like scallops, that's B complex deficiency, gross B deficiency of B complex. Okay? If you have the bright red tongue, that's B12 deficiency. If it's magenta colored, it's riboflavin. Then if we go into the fingernails, there's tons of deficiencies. If there's heavy ridging, it's B complex. If the nails are brittle, that's essential fatty acid and B complex and minerals. If the nail beds are thin, very thin, it's protein deficiency. So you can get an idea also there. If you're tired all the time, you can't function, you're depressed, if you have anxiety, irritability, any of those symptoms, those are B complex deficiency symptoms. Anybody in here having anxiousness, nervousness, irritability, panic attacks? You take whole food B complex and it solves that in most cases. If you're having depression, it's usually B12 as far as B vitamins and niacin. So you can take care of it that way. Okay. Minerals, cramps, poor energy, cardiovascular symptoms, heart arrhythmia, those are typical symptoms. So we kind of covered the nutritional deficiency. Next. How many of you know about chaga? Few of you. Anybody taking it? Chaga is a very sophisticated part of my nutritional program. It is a growth on birch trees. It heals the tree. It's a necessary medicine for the tree. You carve it off, you grind it up, and the people in the primitive areas use it as a coffee. They use it as a tea. They put it in their stew. But this stuff gives you power, staying power, stability, stamina. And the main reason is it's very high in something called superoxide dismutase, SOD. Anybody know about SOD? SOD, can anybody tell me what the longest lived creature on the earth is, has the highest level of SOD? Does anyone know? It's the tortoise. SOD is superoxide dismutase. It's clearly associated with long life. One more thing for you to know. The longest lived primitives in the north, they live to be 80 to 110. They take chaga. They're the Siberian tribes people. From the 1900s to about 1930, they discovered them living to be up to 110. This stuff. But when they went and checked the Inuit tribes down the block who did not harvest chaga, does anybody know how long the typical Inuit lived? 40 years of age. There's something very special about this. We can probably say that regular daily use of chaga could help people live a long, long time. Maybe double the normal lifespan, maybe 1/3 more, maybe 10% more. But it's the daily use that's effective. I don't go a day without chaga. It's the capsules, it's the tea, it's the chunks. It's Chaga City for us. And I feel it. I feel I can do twice as much, maybe 3 times as much. Unbelievable productivity. Yeah. I can write 6 books at once now. I burnt out on books not that long ago. So you got to kind of get into chaga because it's the stamina factor. Yeah, in the back. Oh, yeah, there's a question in the back. You know, it's a good Missouri question. It has nothing to do with health freedom, but it has freedom from oppression. And that is, does chaga do for the sex life? What chaga does is it gives you stamina so that you don't die from having sex or something. You know, they warn you about Viagra. So if you're a little in the older era, then the chaga would help with the stamina part of the sex. But there are other things with sexual and impotence that are probably more aggressive, like antler or sesame oil, you know, as far as potency. When you think of chaga, what we have to think of is that it has something to do with maintaining the organism into a ripe old age without you falling apart. And it probably is because of this SOD, superoxide dismutase. Because when levels of that go down, we go down. Chaga is the richest source in the universe. Now, that's a lot of questions now about chaga. Very good questions. One lady here about inflammation. Here's the 5 things I've seen with chaga. It's exceptionally anti-inflammatory for arthritis, for spinal inflammation, for fibromyalgia, for these kinds of chronic inflammation disorders. Okay? Both taken as tea or the capsules and drops. I like the drops especially for inflammation. It's exceptional as a cream for inflammation in the skin, or even rubbed up and down the spine or on a joint. Okay? She asks about a hip replacement, if that part in the body causes inflammation. The answer is yes, and it also causes infection because it's an artificial device. So not just chaga, but oregano oil and oregano juice to clear out the secondary infections that get attached onto the plates and the ball and so forth. But, so one thing is inflammation with chaga. The second thing is the issue of the prostate. We've had some dramatic cases of prostate reversal with chaga drops and capsules. One guy had a PSA of 50, went to 1 taking these. We've had in the brain with chaga exceptional results with Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, and also any degeneration of the brain and spinal cord. Chaga is effective for that. We've had issues with chaga for people who lack productivity. They're couch potatoes, they want to do more, they cannot function, and that seems to be chaga's premier use. How many of you would like to do more in life, like write a screenplay or novel or write a book on herbs or travel the universe, do more, live longer? Yeah? How many of you would like to live so long that you could outlive the dirty rats that are fighting against us? Okay, the guy in the back with the fungus wants to live long. He wants to outlive his fungus. So that's honest to God. And I know they don't let us say this, but I'm saying it. I'm convinced if you take whole food supplements, in addition to your other supplements, if you do the oregano and do the purge and then do the purge occasionally, you keep the infection down with those, you keep the stamina going in the cardiovascular system and the endocrine system with the chaga, you do that, and you take your oregano oil regularly, I'm convinced we could live to be 100 and 120 in this audience. Absolutely convinced of it. And we have the data from the Siberians, but they took it every day. Yeah, that seems to be the secret. Now, the last thing, and we're kind of over time, we have to do it, is the endocrine system. This is a body-shaped diet. The endocrine system is a very sophisticated system that keeps you alive. This is the final component of my puzzle for you. When you get into shock or fear and you're in a panic, you can have a heart attack. You can, if you get into grief, there's another thing, grief and depression, and this, you can get into a cancer. And the reason you break down and get the cancer, the reason you could have a heart attack from shock reactions is because the endocrine system can't cope. When people are depressed and grieving, it suppresses the endocrine system. When you get too nervous, too agitated, too upset, too angry, you're killing your endocrine system. And the worst thing is anger. You got to get rid of that one. You got to put the prayer on that and have it go away. And the second worst one is self-pity. And the third is grief. They devastate the body. So please talk to your God and tell him to just chase it away. And just have fun. Well, you're going to have fun anyway because you're going to get on the chaga. And the purge will purge all the chemicals out of your body, so you'll be dancing around here. But the final thing is this endocrine. Really, it is. How many of you have studied my system on the body shape? Anybody? Okay, this is a whole thing that's new to you. It's called the body shape diet, and you can actually see in a person's shape what type they are. So if a person is apple shaped with the big part of the apple going around here, maybe a little love handle here, no weight on the sides, even a flat rump, that's a thyroid type. It's an apple-shaped person. If a person's a carrot shape with the big fat part of the carrot coming down here, and maybe a little weight in the rump, but narrow in the upper part of the body, narrow face also, that's a adrenal type. There's a third type, and that's a person that puts weight out going out this way. The hips go out laterally, big enormous buttocks, and fat dimples in here, double love handle on the back. That's a pear, and a pear is a pituitary type. They usually have a round head and small hands and small feet. An apple-shaped one, or thyroid, another feature is that they usually have a square head. Square head, rectangular head with some liver line and furrowing here is usually a thyroid type, you three gentlemen. Usually, again, when the weight goes on with that type, right on the front. So, and then there are kind of combination types. You could be thyroid and adrenal, or adrenal and thyroid. To find out your type a little more, there's an energy pattern. People with thyroid people, ladies and gentlemen, when do they take a dive in their energy? When are they hopeless? Thyroid person is dead meat in what? The morning. So those of you who shut the alarm off, who really struggle in the morning, who stumble around, that's usually a thyroid person. With the adrenal people, where do they take a dip? Where do they nosedive? Yep, they take a dive in the afternoon. They can't finish the day. With pituitary type, the third type, they're usually tired all the time. Yeah. If you're dead meat continuously, you're low in pituitary. Now, there's a craving pattern. People with thyroid crave starch. People with pituitary crave greasy foods a lot of times. And people with adrenal problems, what are they craving? They crave, they crave the sugar, don't they? And chocolate and salt. How many of you are mad for salt and sugar? You crave that? Okay. How many of you in here crave chocolate? You're hitting the chocolate. Usually that's low adrenal. Okay? Now, you want to convince yourself or clinch the type, just look at the hands. Put the hands down, and if you have a short index finger versus the ring, I mean, there's obviously more information in the book and all that, but if your first finger is shorter than the ring, that's thyroid on both hands. Short index finger versus the ring. If it's not so obvious, it's kind of difficult. We've got a big audience. It's not going to be easy for everybody to know. But if it's not so obvious, then it's thyroid adrenal. So if your first finger is just a little bit shorter than the ring, just a little bit shorter, thyroid adrenal. But, well, if it's one hand one way and one hand the other, it's usually thyroid adrenal too. So obvious thyroid, Mr. Phillip, let's see your hands. See, I picked him out as thyroid. He's got the two short index fingers versus the ring. But he's thyroid and adrenal because one's a little different than the other. I picked you out as thyroid, mostly thyroid. Let's see your hands also, mister. Right here, yeah. If you could raise your hands. See, two short index fingers, right? Versus the ring. Two short index fingers versus the ring. Another, remember the rectangular head. You thyroid people are vulnerable to fungus. So you're big fans, big beneficiaries of oregano. You thyroid people are vulnerable to heart disorders and to premature death from heart. So you're big aficionados for chaga and for whole food B complex. So that gives you an idea. But the adrenal people, they have a long index finger versus the ring. Look, look. The lady that craves the sugar. Let's see her right now. This little lady, the chocolate cravers. Let's see you. See, well, she's still shorter. But no, one is the same length. Actually, they're about the same length, so she's got to work on her adrenals. She's not so obviously short. Who is a crazy person for salt and sugar? Who's a nut? The lady in the back? Put the fingers together, and you can look from there and see she's about even. So she's thyroid adrenal. You have to work on the adrenals. Here's a lady here that's a little shorter. So short is most of you. Anybody that has a long index finger, Miss Judy, can you show everybody? Two long index fingers. She's got to work on her adrenals all the time. She takes salt on her food, or food on her salt. She's constantly taking royal jelly. She's constantly taking adrenal formula. If she gets a little nervous or stressed, she knocks it out immediately by eating salt or taking adrenal formula or taking royal jelly or taking chaga, yeah, which stabilizes it. The fellow wants to know if you take the chaga, do you feel it in your head a minute? I feel it all over the place for like this stamina. I don't know. Did you take it? Did it go to your head? I don't know about the head. I just know about the whole body, how it makes you feel like you can do more. Okay? So, yeah, in the back, last couple questions. Go ahead. Well, okay. For gallbladder issues, you've got to take and purge out everything with the greens, with the purge. I would definitely do oregano. I would definitely do lots and lots and lots of purge. Yeah. Lots and lots of juice of oregano, oil of oregano. I would use this purely whole food vitamin, yeah, for that. And also anything that you can get that's dark green, like a dark green juice that you'd make with kale and dandelion leaves and this type of thing, with dark lettuces and so on. Yeah. For gallbladder, also black seed oil. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, in the back here. Right here, the lady in turquoise. For chaga, the drops and the capsules for most people, unless you're a tea person. Yeah. And any other question? All the way in the back first. Yeah. That's the parasite thing. You mean a poor appetite? You got the parasites anyway. So you just take the purge and the oil of oregano, maybe the juice, and start cleaning that stuff out. Take your whole food minerals and your whole food vitamins. Yep. Yep. Go ahead. Yeah. So she asked about poor appetite for the record. Yeah. He's got an excellent question. Do the oregano products kill off good flora in the gut? And the question is, in large doses, you can knock down some of the good bacteria. You want to take a probiotic maybe at night while you're doing your oregano therapy. Many people would benefit a little better if they did that, to implant the good guys. Excellent question. Anybody else? Nerve damage. Chaga, chaga, chaga. She's asking about nerve damage. Chaga under the tongue. I had a lady shuffling with neuropathy. She ditched her walker, taking the drops and the capsules. I mean, I'm telling you medical claims. It's illegal. But I'm telling you as your doctor, as your friend, you know. And the other thing is, for that is the B complex, the powder, lots for neuropathy. Yeah? And this whole thing here. Goodbye neuropathy. Yeah. First here, yeah. Kombucha is fine, it's a natural thing. Sometimes the alcohol level can be too high for some people, but, you know, it's different than chaga, but they both give you that strength. Yeah, here. Pear shape, goes out this way, goes out that way. Rounder head, medium hair, fat pad on the back of the head, chronic obesity. It's sort of a combination of things. Usually they have this fat pad here, this triangular blob. You don't have the blob anyway, right? It's all easy. If you're a pituitary type, you take this. If your adrenals are shot, you take that. If your thyroid is shot, you take that, if you're that type. Yeah. If you're a combo, you might just take the pituitary maybe, or most people really need to take, if they're a combo type, this is the most common type, thyroid adrenal. You take, say, 2 or 3 of each. Some people find if they take 6 of each, it's whole food. You have to experiment with it. But if you're not feeling right, it's usually the endocrine system that's out of balance. Yeah. Here's a lady with severe headaches during the cycle. That's because the thyroid and the adrenals can't compensate for the cycle. It's also usually candida overgrowing because of the estrogen progesterone flux. You have to kill the candida. You have to take the thyroid and the adrenal support because you're a combo type. You want to definitely use the greens. We've had a lot of success eliminating headaches with the greens flush under the tongue, or I think that's the one that they have here. There's a product called Migra X, but obviously it's hormonal, so those 2 things would be the start, and the greens. Yeah. Yes, she's asking about synthroid. Could this eliminate synthroid? Constantly people come up to me and say they take this and the synthroid is gone and they're using this daily. You know, synthroid causes bone loss. It is synthetic. Yeah. All right. Any other questions before we get into the close? Okay, good. Now, yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. We're compressing all the powerful things and the impossible into one talk. She's asking about Fukushima, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you know about Fukushima? It's bad news. All right? Fukushima radiation is everywhere on the planet, and it's in the waterways. It's starting to knock us down. There is a 15,000 increased deaths just from March to June in the United States from Fukushima. This is the research. Stillbirths and infant mortalities increased by 50% in some areas. Wherever there's the most rain is the most toxicity. What do you do about it? What we do is every day I take this, Toxi Purge capsules. It's got bentonite and zeolite and chlorella and burdock and everything I know that binds radiation chemicals. The other thing is to use the detoxy wash to soak your vegetables, which I do at home. All the vegetables go in a big Tupperware tub. I put this detoxy wash in, which I have tested with Geiger counters, and it knocks down the radioactive flecks by up to 95%. In the solution, they're taken out. Then you pour off the solution and rinse the product. It's almost impossible now. There's so much going on. But I can tell you this, I've seen 10 times increase in thyroid disorders since Fukushima. Anybody in here get a thyroid cyst in the last 6 months? Or thyroid problems? Nobody here that's noticed it? And the other thing that we're seeing an increase in is fatigue and exhaustion. How many people are just real tired all the time? Yeah? So you will find that what we do is we try to bind it. The purge helps to purge it out. The purge capsules bind it, and then you wash and clean the vegetables. It's a very tough situation, yeah. His wife has a hard time sleeping. She should eat a salty snack right before bedtime. She should eat the royal oil. I mean, she should take a big, nice, salty snack right at bedtime. The royal oil, royal jelly to settle her adrenals. If she's a thyroid type, you've got to get that regulated so she doesn't have the low oxygen at night and can't sleep. I would give her these endocrine supplements regularly. I would, and that would balance her endocrines. I would give her chaga regularly to balance her. But the cure at night is the royal jelly and the salty snack. Mm-hmm. Any other serious questions? Yeah. There's a comment here about the fact that the animals are suffering from Fukushima radiation. Most of you are aware of this. If you can do the ToxyPurge drops or capsules for your animals, it would help preserve them. The purge, the greens flush, for their thyroids, open up a capsule of this and put it in their food. We're seeing an increase in thyroid cysts in the animals. It's a subtle thing. Chaga, the chaga liquid, easy for the animals. Chaga powder, the chaga drops, of course. And it's a very subtle thing. I just want to close with this. It's very, very, very low level. You don't see it. You don't understand it. But it is causing chronic ill health. And so I do advise that you take some antidotes for that. And then finally, I'm telling you that we have the right to help each other with herbal medicine. And there are big cures here. You start hitting the oregano, you start hitting the purge, you take the chaga, find out what your type is and get the endocrine under control, pound the oregano, pound the whole food supplements, and you're going to all feel like $1 bazillion in no time.